Well, this morning we have Wisconsin DNR wildlife biologist Paul Napierala with us. Good morning, Paul. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good morning.
And you are here because deer season is getting ready to kick off this weekend. And there are some 500,000 Wisconsin hunters expected to head out there this deer season, which is even more impressive that it's that high because the season's not that long, is it?
No, it's a 9-day gun deer season, so running from November 18th to the 26th. And there's a lot of people that typically, should come and be involved in this tradition.
Yeah,
so.
it's definitely a Wisconsin tradition for sure. So what should hunters know about this season in particular?
This season in particular, you're going to want to make sure you're very familiar with your rules and regulations. That's baiting and feeding, blaze orange requirements. What do you do when you harvest a deer? You need to make sure that that deer is registered. So that can be done online or by phone.
Okay.
So how does the weather impact the deer season? Because, during the hunting season in Wisconsin, the temperatures and precipitation are expected to be below average. So how does that have an impact on what you guys do?
The cooler temperatures are definitely good for deer movement. So if we have some cooler temperatures in the morning, we can expect to see pretty good deer activity throughout the morning. The less precipitation you talked about, the easier for folks to get in through the marsh access. It's not so wet, the rivers aren't so high. But one thing to remember is that the ground isn't frozen, so those marshy areas are going to be pretty soft. But
Okay, yeah, so the footwear you wear will play a role in that,
exactly,
for sure.
yeah.
And deer hunting season is quite early this season, so
Yep.
what kind of impact will that have? Is it better for hunters, or?
Typically it is better. So typically when we have an earlier season like this, our harvest reflects a little higher harvest because hunters can expect to see some of that whitetail breeding season or the rut. And so we're on the tail end of that, so we can expect deer to be moving pretty good during the daylight, bucks looking for does, things like that. So I would expect to see some of that this opening weekend for sure.
All right, good news for hunters.
So I understand that some hunters like to use tree stands when hunting, so how can they be safe?
Yeah,
using that?
so with the tree stand, you're always going to want to wear a full body harness. You want to make sure you're connected to your tether line or your line that connects you to the tree. And then if possible, making sure that when you're pulling up your gear that you're doing that very carefully and not overexerting yourself or different things like that. And then if possible, I would recommend wearing a lifeline which connects you to the tree from your stand to the ground the whole time. That's really, keeps you safe.
All right, and then what about some safety tips for bow hunting?
For bow hunting, same thing. A lot of times that's done out of a tree stand, so you want to make sure you're following those tree stand safety tips. But additionally, bow hunting, you're going to want to make sure you're really accurate with that bow. So practicing sighting in, being comfortable shooting, and shooting in all kinds of different positions, and cold weather too. So you want to make sure you're practicing that and just making sure you're safe with that bow.
And what are some safety tips someone could follow when they're using a firearm, like a shotgun or a rifle or something like that?
Yeah, so with a firearm, we have a standard thing called Tab K that we really like to share with folks, and that's treat every firearm as if it were loaded. Always point the muzzle in a safe direction. Yeah. Be sure of your target and what's beyond, and then keep your finger out of that trigger guard until you're ready to shoot. And along with that, you want to make sure you're wearing blaze orange. Different from the bow season, in the rifle season or the gun season, you want to make sure that folks know that you're not a deer and you're in that blaze orange.
Yeah, so that's why it's important. So I'm in a bright color today. Would this suffice, or does it really need to be that blaze orange?
Blaze orange or that fluorescent pink is the requirements, and it's 50% of your body above the waistline. It needs to be in that, and again, that's just a safety thing because people are moving deer through either through pushing them with drives or just still hunting, and you want to make sure that there's no mistakes happening out there.
So let's talk about chronic waste disease. What is it, and what should hunters know when it comes to that?
Yeah, chronic wasting disease, or CWD, it's a nervous system disease that's always fatal to deer. Things that hunters should know would be that we do have testing facilities or testing locations for people to drop off their deer heads or the lymph node samples throughout the state, and there's 3 or 4 in La Crosse, but they're scattered throughout the state, and it's a free testing service. So hunters are successful and want to drop off that sample, feel free to do so, or contact your DNR station and we can help you out that way too. So,
is it a requirement to get the deer tested, or do you just recommend it?
It's not a requirement, but it's recommended. It's an easy process, and it's a free service we provide.
And are there any red flags that the deer may have CWD?
If they're in the later stages of CWD, yeah, they can be pretty thin. They can just not be afraid of people. They can be just not doing well, normal deer behavior, and yeah, that's a red flag for us.
Okay, so definitely want want to get those ones
Oh,
tested.
absolutely. And I do have another question before, because I know we got to wrap up soon, but how does the hunting impact the population of the other animals out there?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we're going to have a ton of people going out this weekend. There's going to be a lot of pressure on both private and public land, so animals can somewhat hunker down during that time just because of all that, you know, different type of pressure and different type of activity out there. So we might have an impact that way, but things go back to normal fairly quick, and the middle of the week should be, you know, a lot less hunters out there, and they'll go back to regular behavior. So.
All right, Paul. Well, thank you so much for joining us,
Yeah,
and we wish all the hunters out there good luck this season, and good luck to you in your efforts.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Stay with us. We'll have everything you need to know in 5 minutes or less after the break.